Diane, and I'm just going to focus on our chat. So we have nothing prepared. We're completely. No. Have I spoken to you directly before, Diane? I can't remember if I have or not.
You have once. I did the Ideal Client Challenge, and I think I won the challenge at the time, and we had a chat directly then, which was a while ago.
So it's a good while ago. So welcome, Diane, to my weekly live that I normally stream into my group, but that's just not happening today. But we're totally going to go with it. And I'm thrilled to have Diane on with me today because, well, just from the get-go, Diane has joined a couple of my programs, but she's just a brilliant color consultant, and I knew that ever before she joined any of my programs. So I love when really experienced consultants join, because I learn as much from you guys as you learn from me. So I'm going to ask Diane some simple questions. I've nothing prepared, just as they come up in my mind, what I want to know. And we're really going to be talking about color analysis today, and Diane's journey really in color analysis, and how she ended up going online eventually. But to begin with, Diane, what I'd like to do is to go back right to the start, and talk about the fact that you were not always a color consultant or a stylist. Before you became a color consultant and stylist, what did you do?
Okay, so yes, before that time, my career was actually spent in nursing, and prior to me leaving nursing, I'd been doing that role for about 30 years, but I was a district nurse for about 9 years before I actually decided to leave nursing. And I always had it in my head that if ever I left, that I wanted to primarily do colour consultations, because it was, just something that totally gripped me in my 30s. And I had followed it.
In your 30s?
Yes, I read a book on a night shift. Well, it was an article rather, Carol Jackson, Colour Me Beautiful. And I was just gripped, totally fascinated with the concept of colour. So I followed it for myself. I had my colours analysed in my early 30s. I was told I was a bright spring. And so it was something that stayed with me. And I knew that if I ever gave up nursing, which I did when I was 55, I was able to take an early retirement. And this was in my head that I would be trained to be a colour consultant, and then put that together with makeup, because I trained in between nursing as a beautician also. So that's exactly what I did. So that was in 2014 now, so obviously quite a while ago.
So 2014. Yeah, yes. That's when you got your first training in colour, is it? And who did you train with, Diane?
Well, I did a lot of Googling. I didn't feel that I particularly wanted to be part of a franchise. So for that reason, I chose not to go with Colour Me Beautiful, which may have been the only, I hadn't heard of House of Colour at that time. So anyway, I did some Googling, and I found an independent company that were based in London called Style Me Academy. So I contacted them. I just wanted to work for myself and set the rules, the boundaries, work as I wanted to work, be self-employed. So the training was 2014, so quite a while ago.
Amazing. And yes. Which system did you train in, Diane?
Well, I trained in the 4 seasons, so the seasonal system, and that was the system that I'd understood anyway from what I had already learnt over the years about myself. So I practiced with just the 4 seasons, probably for over 6 years, once I started, but I did find that there were limitations with that. Not everybody fitted exactly into the box, although I
Yes.
could tweak a bit, you know, with light and bright or whatever.
Yes,
Yeah.
because, you know, when I initially trained as well, I'm trying to pull out my little color fans here. I trained with Color Me a Season in the US, and these were the fans we got. Actually, this is probably one of the very first fans I had, because I can see all my markings at the back. These are probably the ones I trained with. But what we used to do then is that if somebody was kind of, you know, a cooler summer, we'd give them the more medium tone colors at the edge, and then we would go down the fan for people who were kind of more of a light summer kind of flow into spring. So even though I was trained on the 4 seasons, we had some options within the fans themselves, even back then. And then, so you trained with the 4 seasons, and what did you move into then, Diane? What was the next step, would you say, in your color journey?
In my color journey, well, I think I had read about online color analysis. So I then started to get interested in what does that actually mean? You know, how could that work for me? Would it be something I could even manage? Because IT is not one of my greatest strengths.
Well, as you can see, Diane, it is not one of my greatest strengths either.
Mine this morning. And then I think the crunch came really. I was, I had to make the decision during the lockdowns.
Yeah.
So obviously I found that I just couldn't work. So I thought, well, and I had some money saved up for a holiday. Couldn't go on holiday because we weren't allowed to go on holiday. So I just thought, well, I shall use, you know, some of that. And then I found you when I was Googling, and I decided I would like to work with you to learn the online colour analysis, because I liked how you came across. So yes, I booked onto your course, and that was probably about 2 years ago now.
So can I take you back to that time just before you actually decided to go all in, Diane? Because I think that's where a lot of people are right now that are watching. They're at that stage where they're kind of thinking, I really think, well, I'm hearing a lot about this, maybe. I'm hearing a lot about this online color analysis, but I'm skeptical. Because I remember that feeling well of, I came across, there was people doing online color analysis, not a lot, but there was people doing online color analysis before I started doing online color analysis. But I was kind of skeptical because I was traditionally trained. Were you also skeptical that it would work online, Diane?
I probably was a little bit skeptical, but yeah, I was open, you know, for that, and I was ready. I was ready for the challenge.
Right.
I felt experienced enough that I felt I would have a good idea of, you know, how I could, not necessarily how I could analyse somebody, but if I saw a photo that I would have a fair idea. But I knew that wasn't enough. I needed to learn the skills of how I was actually going to do this.
Yeah.
So I just decided to go for it. I thought, well, and you know, plus I hadn't done any further training since I did the original training, and I felt that it would be a good update for me, a good refresher. And also, I really wanted to learn the tonal system. So
Yes.
obviously I learned that during the course. So that was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I think you know, I trained on the 4 seasonal system, and then it kind of went to, they said 12, you know, you could potentially go to 12. But I found that, you know, beyond 8, it kind of started getting a bit ridiculous because I wasn't able to, you know, communicate to the client how to find those colors in the shop, like when it got really, really specific. Because I think we have to bear in mind that our clients are not color consultants, and they need the information in a simple way so that they can actually go into the shop and find the colors. So when I discovered the tonal system before I started training online, but I found it really useful for those kind of in-betweens that you call them. So for instance, if you look at somebody like me, I'm a summer, but I kind of can wear a lot of the winter colors. So I actually find that the cool swatch is a better fit for me than summer. There's loads of the lighter summer colors that they just don't work for me, especially if I wear them alone. I need a medium level of contrast, and I need a darker kind of color along with the light color. So having the tonal system really helps, doesn't it? So what surprised you about online color, Diane?
What surprised me was that it actually wasn't that difficult. Obviously the process, was a challenge, but a good challenge. But the actual process of analysing somebody, to be able to do that from a photograph, and also using the drapes, of course. And what I learnt, which I hadn't known before, which I believe is your method, is what you term as this level of contrast.
Yes.
So and that was so helpful.
Yeah.
And that's something that I can use in person as well.
Yes.
Using that online, so that it really has enhanced my colour assessment skills.
Yeah, it's such a little thing, but it makes such a massive difference, doesn't it? Because it immediately helps you narrow down which season they could be. So after all my years of training, and despite knowing all the systems that are out there, I still go back to the basics. I still go back to what's the level of contrast that I'm looking at. Even as I'm looking at you right now, it's very obvious that you're higher rather than lower contrast, just from the whites of your eyes, from the darkness of the color in your eye versus your skin even. You can see that level of contrast. So then you're immediately thinking winter or spring, and then you're narrowing it down to warm or cool. So you're very obviously warm, and this is on a video, and I don't recommend people do it on a video because the lighting is so variable. So the quality of the pictures, and people don't really get this, the quality of the pictures are so important, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yes. I've had people send me photos, and they've just been dark, not well lit enough. So then it's been a case, as you have said, to go back and not be afraid to ask for more photos, because at the end of the day, you want to give them, you want a good result, you want the right result for the client.
Yes.
So that they can be happy with how they've been analysed.
Absolutely. And I found then when I started doing online color analysis first, honestly, the first time I did it was a bit of a flop, Diane. And I think it was a bit of a flop because I wasn't sure that I believed that it actually worked. And I hadn't kind of my process worked out. I was kind of analyzing the photos and I was sending it back to the person with the report, but I didn't have a conversation with the person. So I didn't enjoy it. I feel that a lot of consultants are worried that they're not going to enjoy the consultation. Mm-hmm. And I found like I had to bring back the client into the picture and have the face-to-face and have the interaction with the client to really start enjoying the consults again. And that kind of changed everything because, it was like, it's like human to human in a way, isn't it? Just like this, having this conversation with you here now, it makes a big difference to, meet with the client and talk through the client's concern and, give them a really nice experience as well, because sometimes they just want to talk, right?
Yes.
So what has been your experience of doing an online consult versus doing an offline consult? Because it is a different experience, isn't it?
Yes, it is very different. I think there's several, big advantages. Well, the biggest advantage is, that you don't have to meet the client, before you've actually analysed them. So that is a massive advantage. And yeah, obviously things like I work from home, I've got a garden room studio, but people still come into my home if they want to use the toilet. So not having to make sure everything is, you know, pristine.
Perfect.
Yeah, perfect, and you've done the washing up and all the rest of it, is another big advantage. And yeah, so, and it is very different. I think probably, as you were saying, I was concerned I might not enjoy, you know, the actual experience, you know, the meeting as much. But I have to say that it's equally enjoyable. It's just quite different. And I do email exchanges, you know, a few with the client beforehand. So I feel like I've already got to know them a bit during the email exchanges before we actually meet. So that's, yeah, quite helpful.
It really and truly is. Like, so because, you know, I did the poll in my group during the week, and I think when we're doing it for a while, we kind of forget some of the issues that were there before we started doing it. So the poll kind of brought back some of the feelings that I had. But I think I got a bit hooked though once I started doing it, Diane, because of the ease of online color. You know, I could still be in my slippers. I could, you know, get ready. I could be in my slippers. You know, as you said, I didn't have to lock in the dogs to bring in a client. I didn't have to worry that my husband was wandering around, you know, in his underpants or whatever, and or that the boys were wandering around naked. So there is a big difference, but I think the other thing I found is that I was much more relaxed. I was much more prepared for the client. I was much more relaxed. It was much easier to stick to the time. You know, it's an hour consult. This is the start time. This is the finish time. Whereas when I was bringing people into my home, they didn't want to go home.
No, I found that. I found that the process is much more organised. Almost.
It's much more organized. Much more
when
organized.
You're in person, time can just run away, and then the client, you know, sort of wants more and more of you, and it's hard to sometimes, in the session. And I think, as you're saying about ease, doing the online analysis, but also ease for the client, because, you know, they're not having to travel. They can just turn up, you know, just sit down, turn on the laptop. So maybe, it can be more comfortable also for the client.
Yeah, and it depends, I suppose, on who your client is. Like, if you have a very specialized client who cannot travel, or who is stuck somewhere or something like that, it just makes a big difference in the world that we're in now, because the world is different, isn't it, compared to before COVID? You know, people got used to doing things online, and I don't think it's ever going to go back now. No. So how would you say your clients are in terms of happiness with your consults online?
I would say really happy. And I've had a couple of clients where I've done an update for them. So the original analysis was in person, and then they've both told me that actually they really enjoyed, one even preferred the online analysis.
The online experience.
Yes, the different experience.
Yeah, I mean, it was wondrous to me, Diane, when I went online, because, you know, I had lost all the clients that I had in Singapore that I had built up for 18 years. And like you, I found loads of clients came back online for a refresh, who had moved to the States, or who were still in Singapore, or had gone grey and things like that, you know, over the years, and they were able to come back and, you know, spend time with me again on a refresh, which is available. So what would you say to the people who are saying they don't know where to start, Diane? So there's 35% of the poll. That's the last time I looked at it. I didn't look at it today, but the last time I looked at it, 35% of the people who polled on there said they didn't know where to start. What would your advice be to them, Diane? Bearing in mind that you give them whatever advice you want, Diane, don't let me influence you in any way.
If they say they don't know where to start, I'm guessing that they're not sure how the process would work of the learning. Maybe is that what they're meaning? I wonder. They're not sure.
I think that it's probably a couple of things, but
yes.
I think it's mindset. They're kind of thinking, I'm not 100% sure whether it works or not. And honestly, the way I look at that is, you know, that's for you to convince yourself. That's for you to do the research. It's for you to, you know, do your due diligence and see the results that other consultants are getting, for instance. It's not about me convincing you that it works, because anyway, I can't convince, and I'm not in the business of convincing. No. That's more about yourself. And then the second thing is, you know, to understand, is there fear? Is it fear that, you know, I'm going to fall flat on my face? Or that, you know, I really, for me, I suppose, when I think back to when I was starting, the fear was people won't believe it works. People don't believe it works. And maybe I'll get a lot of criticism for that. So this fear around the criticism that it doesn't work. But, you know, I also justified that fear in my head, because I had so many clients over the years who came in for a repeat color consultation face-to-face because they felt the results weren't right with another consultant. Sometimes the other consultant was right, and sometimes the other consultant, in my mind, didn't get it quite right, you know. But at the end of the day, that will happen offline or online.
Yes, yes, yeah. And I think, you know, the process of the actual, you know, Zoom meeting where you're presenting your findings, your analysis to the client, you know, there's still flexibility within that. So if I've analysed somebody as a particular, you know, season or colour group, tonal colour group, and they're not happy with that, I can still pull out some different options, you know, some compromises, you know, within that, even working online, you know, showing, you know, something else that may be more acceptable to them. So yeah, it is a very flexible system.
It is very flexible, and I think what stands to you, though, Diane, in fairness, is your level of experience. You know, you have a lot of experience, and you have enough belief and confidence in yourself that you can kind of, you know, change the consultation to flow this way or that way, depending on how the client is. Because at the end of the day, it's about sending the client away happy, isn't it? That they feel good about themselves, that they feel good about the colors. So there's no point in giving them a set of colors if they don't feel good about their set of colors, even though in your mind they're the right colors for them. So what would you say to consultants who are kind of starting out? Because, you know, you're part of the 5 weeks to online color expert program with the support group. And there's several consultants in there who never actually did a face-to-face consultation. What would you say to those people? Oftentimes they just do not have the opportunity, especially during COVID. There was no opportunity to learn how to do color analysis face-to-face. What are your thoughts on that, Diane, or what would you say to those people?
To the so the people in the group who have never actually done an online colour?
Yeah, the people who kind of have no experience with face-to-face, and they're worried that they need experience with face-to-face before they can go online.
Yeah, so if somebody really isn't feeling confident at all about using the skills they've learnt, you know, really just to practice, you know, with a friend, with a relative, you know, keep practicing until you actually feel confident. And then you can get some real honest feedback from somebody that you feel safe with, is a really good way to start. And, you know, I think a lot of women perhaps, well, it depends what line of work you've come from, if you've come from a different career or what your skills are, but a lot of people do worry about the IT, you know, skills that you need. And as I say, you know, so PowerPoint and Zoom, a lot of women aren't confident with that. But I felt, well, I did have, you know, the support that I needed to actually learn those skills and actually learn them at my own pace. So the course doesn't, I never felt pressurized, you know, doing the course, but I had to complete, you know, the modules at, you know, specific times, or, you know, within, you know, so many weeks or whatever. So I was able to pace myself. Maybe there's also a fear of, you know, when you set up a Zoom meeting and there's an IT problem like today, but as long as you've actually spoken, you know, forewarned the client that that could happen, it's not a disaster. You know, if there's no IT connection, something happens, we can reschedule the meeting. I have had a couple of ladies who've contacted me and wanting online colour analysis, but they, as the client, have actually been afraid of, you know, will I manage the Zoom, etc. You know, will I manage to do it my end, even though, you know, you try and explain. And my suggestion has been, you know, that we could do a preliminary, like a practice session without actually doing the colour, just to find out if they can get onto Zoom.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's been helpful as well. You know, to take the fear away, really.
It's to take the fear away, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the problem with a lot of consultants, to be honest, and I remember this back in the day, is they tend to get trained in colour and then they're on their own. You know,
Yeah.
there's no one to bounce ideas off of. There's no one to ask a question. There's no one to have a second look at what they're doing and reassure them. And I think that's what the support group really provides, is that there's over 70 consultants in there. You know, they're all excellent consultants. You're never on your own. You're always going to be reassured. There's always a lively discussion on the case studies we do in there. So I think having that kind of space where you can come and ask a question, where you can bring your pictures and have them confirmed, where you can argue your point, or say, well, I'm seeing this, what are you seeing, and why are you saying this? You learn so much through that process. So I think that's what sets me apart from every other colour system out there. You get lifetime access to that support group, which is what I wanted when I started.
Yes, I think that's massive, actually. And that was another thing, you know, that I found, you know, doing that particular, you know, the online colour expert course, is just not being on my own anymore. I sort of, you know, felt like in the first few years muddling through just on my own with no support. And obviously the support in the group, you know, is amazing, the support through the course. And also, obviously, I've connected with you, and you make connections with other personal stylists as well. So you can talk to each other. You know, if you connect with them.
I think traditionally, you know, Diane, we have been kind of set up as competitors against each other, and it's just not true. There's like enough clients out there in the world for every single one of us, you know, and we don't have to compete with each other. And I felt really strongly about that when I was starting my support groups and my different groups, that we were there to support each other, and that there is enough out there. There's enough abundance. There's enough clients in the world for us all. And it's about, you know, helping each other rather than competing with each other. And that's why I have a really no nonsense attitude to consultants putting each other down or comparing other consultants' work. Like, you're in the wrong place if you're hanging out with me and you're criticizing other consultants. It's just not going to work in this space, because my belief is your relationship with the client and what you tell the client is the best that it can be between the two of you. And no outside consultant can, you know, judge that really, because they're not, it's like what goes on behind, you know, in the relationship between a client is absolutely between them, and you don't know what the client's requirement is. So this focus on criticizing other consultants or putting other consultants down or putting other systems down, I totally don't believe in it.
Yeah, so agree. Yes.
Yeah,
totally
it's so important that we lift each other up and help each other rather than putting each other down.
That's right.
So I really, really appreciate you coming on and talking to me, Diane, and just being really honest and you know, being really, really yeah, just really honest and telling it how it is. You know, you had nothing to gain really by coming on, and I really appreciate you doing it for me, because obviously you had to turn up and be live. And Diane is in the group, so if you have any specific questions, I'm sure Diane would be quite happy to answer any of your questions. And of course, I'm there answering as well. And also for the consultants who have been trained in color analysis, whatever the system, and you are confused, please, please, please look out for an event I'm running on the 9th of February. I'm going to be teaching the seasonal and the tonal, and I'm going to be looking at your system, and I'm going to be demystifying all the confusion, because that is the other thing that I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that lots of consultants are afraid to go online as well, because they're a bit confused about color analysis. I see so many personal stylists take styling courses that have color as part of them, but they're not really trained. They haven't been trained, and they have no experience, and they're trying to do it all themselves. They're trying to figure it out themselves. That is not necessary. So a great first step, and a very affordable step, I always try and think, how can I make it affordable for everyone, is this color analysis clarity workshop, which I'm running on the 9th of February. There is a link in the group and on my page, and I will be talking about it for the next 10 days or so. Get in there, come along to the 3-hour workshop, and color will never be the same again for you. So I'm going to leave it there for today. I thank Diane once again for coming and joining me live, and I really appreciate it. And any questions, pop them underneath the video. So I'll say goodbye right now, and I will chat to you all soon. Thank you, Diane.
Bye. Thank you for asking me. Bye.